Hi, I'm Mara, and I am the Farm Programs Coordinator here at Cibolo Nature Center Farm. Today, Keith Amelung and I are going to be taking you through the entire process of starting a garden from scratch, irrigating it, and planting it. So soup to nuts, we're going to do the whole thing with you today so you can get started growing your own victory garden and having food.
Okay, so over the last couple of years, we have been planting things out in this plot to soften the soil. We've had sun hemp and daikon radishes and all kinds of summer beans and summer peas. So what we've done is we've just mowed it down. In a perfect world, we would have taken it with a weed eater. We would have shaved it down to raw soil, but we just don't have the time to do that. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit. I'm going to come through, and if I see a pretty hardy pernicious perennial of some sort, I'm going to go ahead and pop it out.
So what we're doing here is we are just trying to spread out the soil and the compost and just mix it pretty evenly.
Now we're going to do soil amendments, things that we're actually adding into the soil in copious quantities. Number one is lava sand. Lava sand is a desiccant. It's a natural desiccant. It pulls moisture out of the air. Plus, it helps break open the clay and keep the soil light and airy. So we've got a couple pounds of lava sand here. We're just going to dust that liberally about the bed, and then we're going to rake it in. And then we also have earthworm castings. Earthworm castings are mycorrhizae, great fertilizer, also a lot of earthworm eggs. And we're going to go ahead and rake that in and ready to go. And you can also take earthworm castings and when you plant, add them at the bottom of the hole underneath your plants. You can't have enough earthworm castings. So we're just going to broadcast this stuff over the surface, and then we'll get the rake and we'll rake it on out.
So all we're doing now is using these rakes to mix in the soil amendments that we just broadcast over the soil. So we've got your two 20-foot perforated lines for your drip system. It's going to be your really deep watering that will be running for 90 minutes or so, once or twice a week, depending on the weather.
The drip line runs more or less in the middle of this 2-foot bed. As the water percolates out, it goes down underground, it makes a big V. So each of these at 12-inch spacing will water an area about that big when we let it run for about an hour or two. That's going to be at that depth.
And then those will be connected on either end with a shorter, non-perforated blank tubing that's about 2 feet. So you'll have a T, you'll have one of these, and that's going to be at the end of your drip system, connecting it to the main line. You will have 4 elbows. So these are going to form the corners of your drip system. They're a little tough to get in. You can try spitting on it to get it in there a little bit easier. And that forms the corners. We have these just couples. That's just in case you make a mistake. You need a little more line. We like to plan for mistakes. They happen. We've got our figure 8 here,
Which will close the end of the spitter system.
You'll also have these staples to secure it as you're placing your line, so it's not folding up on you.
Once it's out in the sun for a little while, it relaxes, but while it's all curled up in the bag, it'll tend to be like a little pig's tail. So using the staples to kind of hold it in place temporarily, you can leave them in for a while. It's a duplex system. You have your main drip line, which is for your deep weekly or bi-weekly watering. Most of the time, one good, deep, thorough drink once a week, even for a vegetable garden, is more than enough until we get progressively hot. Now, this system that we're going to do here is for new transplants and seedlings. We have 2 different types of sprayers, and so we'll have one that's for transplants. They can work for both, but it throws bigger drops of water. Then we have another one that has a real fine fan, which is really great for doing seedling work.
So what we've done is we've taken these spitters, which come with this attachment on the end. So what you're going to do is you're just going to snap that off. You're going to cut your micro vinyl, or laser line as Keith calls it. You're going to attach this spitter from this end onto one end, and then you're going to take that little piece and put it on the other end, and that's what's going to snap into the holes that you punch in your center line here.
All right. Well, Maura showed you the assembly of the little spitter system. And then, so what we got is you got your main line. There's no perforation in there. It's just a solid line. And you're going to come in. I measure them about, I don't know, 16 inches apart. You got your little punch tool, which is just a simple little pin. And just push in and twist. And it pops out. And then you've got this thing here. The way we set them up, one end will be flat, the other end has got a little point on it. We use the little pointy end, and it goes into the hole. You actually hear it snap into place. Okay, so what I've chosen to do is I've chosen to alternate my spray heads from a spray head to a what we call a spitter head or a shrubbler. I'm alternating them. It's a very versatile system. No, you don't have to do it this way. There's 101 ways to do it. Yeah.
So another option, if you maybe haven't planned exactly where you're planting everything and you don't know if you're going to be direct seeding or using a transplant, you can wait till later and you can come and punch your holes in and add your spitters in depending on what you plant where. So it's a very versatile system, and that's why we're using it. This is great because it's a really dynamic system. You'll get about 30 feet of this line and you can cut it at any length that you want so that you can...
16, 18 inches, make sure you get about 20 pieces out of the 30-foot line. So about a foot and a half piece will give you plenty of wiggle room.
Yeah, and then move them around where you plant. And all you do is twist it to turn it on. If you notice, they'll come off if you keep twisting them. And if they're too loose, they'll shoot off when the pressure starts in the system.
And we'll never find them.
And we will never find them again. So it's good to test it and see how much pressure is in the system.
And we'll have the timer set up so it goes off early in the morning, hopefully before the wind picks up and that little fine water doesn't spray off all over the place. So the watering of the daily system will go off in the morning, probably for about 5 minutes every day. And then what you'll do is you'll turn these heads off if you don't need them. These are for establishing plants for that first 2 weeks that you put something in through seeds or transplants. So it's up to you to monitor after that 2 weeks to go ahead and just turn that head off, because it's not necessary after 2 weeks. That's where the main drip line picks up. All right, so what we've done is we put in our main line tee. This is where we will come back and we will attach to the main line. This will swivel, but I want facing upright to keep as much dirt out of it as we possibly can. And what we did, and I'm just coming back just to demonstrate, it doesn't have to be right in the middle. It can be left, right, it just doesn't matter. But basically you'll cut your line and you'll install the tee. A little bit of lubrication. Install the tee. It takes a little bit of effort on there. Do your best not to get dirt into the line. Please, 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 please. And so, as you can see, it takes a little bit of gumption to get that on there like that. But we'll just pretend that's the middle piece. And it goes like that.
So I just want to show you how we set up our drip system, our daily watering system, to our main irrigation line that's going to run up to the faucet. So it's pretty simple. You're going to use one of these barb tees, the same ones that you used at the end of the drip line. So you just hook it up here, cut a little piece of the blank tubing. Again, this is the one without the perforations, without the drips in it, the emitters. It's just the blank tubing. And you run it here, another barb tee, and then you just run your main irrigation line all the way up to the faucet. If you are on the edge, if this is your last bed, then just use an elbow instead of a tee. So it just curves around like that. Then you do exactly the same thing for the other line. So you're going to have one line running to the faucet for the drip system and one line running to the faucet for your daily watering system. And that's why we chose a timer that has 2 outlets on it. So the last thing that you need to do when you're setting up your irrigation is hooking up your timer and all of this tubing that you've done to your faucet, wherever that might be. Most people, if you're doing this at home, you probably just have a single faucet. So you can buy a splitter from Home Depot. They're really inexpensive. So you can have 2 nozzles, one for your irrigation and one for your hose, so that you don't have to take the whole thing apart every time you hand water. So there's a few components to this. Here we have our filter. So that gets any little bits of rock or whatever out of the line so that it doesn't clog up your drip line, because these do get clogged pretty easily. You really have to be careful through the whole process not to get stuff in them. Then we have our pressure regulator. This is very important, and it comes in different kinds. This is also a pressure regulator. This one is at 40 psi. This one's at 30 psi. not too big of a deal, whichever one it is. The thing is just that it's making the pressure uniform. So when you set up your irrigation, it remains the same, and you don't have to continually readjust it every time you turn it on. So it'll make your life a lot easier. Also, the pressure can be too much for these timers, and it'll make it really hard to keep it screwed on here. So there's a lot of reasons that you want to do that. The last piece is the timer itself. We have this one set up here with 2 outlets. So one of them is our drip irrigation system, and one of them is the daily watering system. If you're using the same one, you'll need a 2 outlet timer as well. If you just have a drip, you can just get one with one. The price doesn't actually vary that much though, so I think it's a good idea to get 2. And the timer won't just like shoot water out of the one that you're not using, and you can also cap it. This is called threading tape or seal threading tape, and it is really helpful for stopping up any leaks and anything that has threading like this here. So you'll just wrap it like this. It wraps right there. The threads still go through, so you can still hook it together, and it'll help seal up those leaks.
All right, so you may have wondered why the guy goes so nuts with digging this hole. Well, it's because I've got a little 1-gallon tomato plant that I'm going to be putting in, and theoretically you plant tomatoes a little bit deeper. So I've dug my hole. I held back a little bit of earthworm castings from my own stockpile at the house. I'm going to put some earthworm castings. It's a good handful of earthworm castings. This is my own little bucket of rock phosphate that I bought. Rock phosphate, bone structure, calcium, builds big, strong plants. You cannot use too much rock phosphate. I use it on everything from water lilies to everything else. So I'm going to put a nice heavy handful of rock phosphate right down the middle of the hole. I'm not mixing it in, I'm just putting it in the middle of the hole. Now, I just potted this tomato up a few days ago, so it's going to be kind of loose in this pot, so I'm going to be very delicate with it. A lot of loose soil here, but you see it's already hitting the bottom. Set it down deeper in the hole and just kind of backfill some of this nice good soil, some of the loose soil, some of the big heavy stuff back around it. Tuck it in nice and tight. And it will form new roots up and down that stem. And I've got my little stakes that I brought with me, so I can kind of secure it until I get my trellis set up. Because new plants hate wind. That's a real windy day if you haven't noticed. So we're going to secure him up and give him a little bit of a head start since he's a little baby. And then we'll come in and your spitter system. I've got a couple different spitters here, but I think the one that's got the big bubblers, I'm going to open it up a little bit. I'm going to set that pretty close to the bottom of the tomato plant. And before the day is over here, once we have the system set up, we'll test it out and make sure it's working once I get everybody planted. But we've got our plant, we've got our rock phosphate, we've got our earthworms castings, and he's happy and ready to go. I'm going to be doing some parsley. This is curly parsley. I grow Italian parsley for edible purposes. I grow the curly parsley so for the swallowtails to lay their eggs on. I also have one of my favorite little things. These are pineapple tomatillos. I love pineapple tomatillos. You can either buy transplants, or what most people will do is buy some seeds. You can just as easily just make a little dibble in the soil, put in 2 or 3, firm it back on, and you put the spitter next to it. And that'll cover a pretty good sized area. You can put in several little clumps of bean seeds. I've got a couple tomatoes over here that I've set in. These are green sausage, which is a semi-determinate. It's only going to get about this big, so it's not going to cast too much shade because all these other plants are going to be a lot bigger as the season grows. And again, north, south, east, west. This is the west side of the bed. This is going to get the full hot sun during the middle of the summer. I'm going to have some basil in this bed. I mentioned I'm going to have some bush beans in here. The bush beans will fry up and be long gone by July, and we'll probably finish those up. We'll come back behind those with summer peas and okra. So okra will be great because okra will come in and be tall and then help shade that half of the garden. So we're going to be keeping that in mind. And then peppers and all those other types of things that love the heat, they go over here on the west side of the bed. Alrighty, so once you get things planted, give them a nice little drink. The first watering is the most important, sets the tone for the life of the plant.
So we've got a couple of books to recommend for your planting plan. So All of you are going to have a 4-foot by 20-foot bed, so it's limited space, and this book is just awesome for maximizing the space that you have. It's called Square Foot Gardening because it breaks things up into square footage and has really helpful guides for how far apart you can plant things, some really fast growing plants like radishes that you can sort of plant around other things that take a little bit longer. So this is a really, really excellent resource for when you're planning what plants you want to put in your space. So both of these books are readily available online. They're easy to find. This one might be worth buying used.
Well, it's a little bit harder to find. It's an old edition, but the original Square Foot Gardening is by Mel Bartholomew, is the best-selling garden book of all time. The first chapter on soil preparation is worth the weight of the book. It's well worth 20, 25 bucks. And then I recommend the other one because it's about Texas gardening. This is my Bible. That's what I have in my truck. I've got one in the bathroom. I've got one that lives out in the garden in a 5-gallon bucket. I have several copies of the Texas Organic Vegetable Gardening, and that's a great one.
Thank you so much, and let's grow some food.